Good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting of Stratford City Council to order. And this time we'll take a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Through your worship, item number 2 is declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof.
Councillor Gaffney.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to declare pecuniary interest in item 7.4, resolution subdivision agreement for Knightsbridge Phase 1. I have a shareholder's interest in an abutting property. And item 11, reading of the bylaws, 11.2, authorize entering into an execution of subdivision. Same reason.
Thank you, Councillor Gaffney. Any others? If not, the clerk has noted those. Clerk.
Through your worship, item number 3 is adoption of the minutes, and there is a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting dated March 14th, 2022 of Council of the Corporation of the City of Stratford be adopted as printed.
Moved by Councillor Bunting and second by Councillor Vasilakos that the minutes from March 14, 2022 be adopted. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item number 4 is adoption of the addenda, and there is an addenda to be adopted to add 2 delegation requests. And there is a motion that the addenda to the regular agenda of council and standing committees dated March 28, 2022 be added to the agenda as printed.
Ritzman moving, Councillor Seven seconding that the addenda be adopted for this evening's proceedings. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Through your worship, item number 5 is report of the committee of the whole in camera session. Item 5.1 at the March 28, 2022 session under the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, matters concerning the following items were considered. Item 4.1, expropriation and related litigation, March 2022 update. And that was considered under the litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, as well as advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Item 4.2, review of lease agreements with Festival Theatre. That was considered under a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality, as well as proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land by the municipality. And 5.1, Senior of the Year and Ontario Senior Achievement Award 2022 nominations follow-up, and that was considered under personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees or local board employees. And at the in-camera session, direction was provided on all items.
Thank you.
Through your worship, item 6 is hearings of deputations and presentations. And item 6.1 is a request for delegation from Jory Beer and Lisa James. And there is a motion that the delegation of Jory Beer and Lisa James regarding heritage alteration permit application for 265 St. David Street be heard.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Burback and seconded by Councillor Ingram. The delegation be heard. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is carried. Councillor Henderson.
I just want to apologize. I didn't realize my video had clicked off.
No problem. All right, Ms. James and Mr. Beer are here, and I'll turn it over to them. Welcome them, and thank you for taking the time to make a presentation this evening.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm curious, did everyone receive the information sheet basically on what we wanted to talk about today? You did? Excellent.
Circulated.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I'm going to be looking at kind of reviewing what we're going to do that's going to best suit this property, because I understand the issue is the non-original wood doors that used to be on the exterior of the building. The issue I've run into it is, one, the exterior doors, we can't have them be opening, as was stated in the sheet that was passed around here due to safety concerns. Issue 2, if we were to seal those doors up, that prevents having an open window in a bedroom, and being that these units all have people living in them, I can't justify doing something that goes against building code and would cause a fire hazard or potential life hazard for someone living in those apartments. We did find out the doors are not original, and we could mount them on the outside, but then we are covering up the detailed original brickwork of the building. So I'm hoping we can come to an agreement with something that will suit both us and you guys best while kind of keeping the look of the heritage property.
Thank you. Is there any questions at this time with regard to the information presented? Councillor Ingram.
Thank you. Has any of that information been shared with members of Heritage Stratford?
Specifically, just what the challenges would be with affixing the doors to the exterior?
Well, your correspondence with all of your questions and comments that you provided to council, has that been shared with Heritage Stratford or city staff?
Unfortunately, we are at a little bit of a disadvantage in terms of, like, we understand our staff, our coworker, Nancy Rustin, attended at the last meeting. And short of seeing any notes from the minutes, we understand that she felt like there wasn't a fulsome discussion. And I took the point from being allowed 5 minutes that, you guys have sort of revisited it. Jory and I have been tasked, myself being the HR and legal liaison, and Kim being hands-on, doing all the trades and skilled technical work with what the decision is ultimately going to be in completing the project. We actually are going to have carriage of this from beginning to end. So to the extent that you needed us to communicate with someone else, or there should be someone we should be connecting to or making a meeting outside of this forum, we'd be happy to do that. It just seems very confusing to us that there seems to be a lot of interaction, but maybe not progress. And so we'd be happy to take instruction even just this evening.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions from members of council? All right, Councillor Henderson, I see your hand.
Wondering if we shouldn't defer this back to Heritage Subcommittee and let them all have a discussion and then come forth with, and then have Heritage come forth with what they feel would be, if they can find some kind of solution or not.
Do you have a proposal that you'd like to put on the floor for council to consider, Councillor?
I didn't know if I should do it now or when we come to it. If I should do it now, I would defer this to Heritage Subcommittee.
Probably the best is to do it under that, but if there was something else, Councillor Ingram, I see your hand.
Thank you. There's another delegation to speak on this topic immediately after this delegation. So if we could wait, that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll withdraw till then.
Okay. Councillor Bunting.
Yeah, I've said this before and I've asked the question, did we ever determine what happened to the doors? Are they in the top or are they sort of in the basement of that building?
Currently, they're just sitting on the main floor of the building. Just
good
leave
to
it
know.
against the wall. Yes.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beer and Ms. James. We appreciate it. We'll head on now to the agenda item.
Okay, so will the follow-up be that we'll receive a communication maybe from the deputy clerk as to next steps, or?
The follow-up will be that we're going to have one more presentation, and it's on the Heritage Planning and Heritage Committee meeting later tonight.
Okay.
And if you choose to watch the rest of the meeting, you'll see it, and there would be follow-up, of course, from staff following any decision council makes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So through your worship, turning to your addenda, item 6.2 is a request for delegation from Patrick O'Rourke. And there is a motion that the delegation of Patrick O'Rourke regarding heritage alteration permit application for 265 St. David Street be heard.
Moved by Councillor Clifford and Councillor Ingram. Seconding. All those in favor? That's carried. Have Mr. O'Rourke join us here momentarily.
Good evening. I'm assuming you can hear me.
Yes, we
That was
can.
a very interesting presentation that you just heard. And I guess the question I have is why that presentation was made to council now, several months after this whole process began, rather than made to Heritage Stratford, and why the owners did not accept what I understand was an invitation from Heritage Stratford to meet and accomplish exactly what they were just saying they wanted to do, which was work out a solution that both meets the building code, which of course is a requirement, but also meets the Ontario Heritage Act, which is also a requirement. I believe that the recommendation and the motion from the Planning and Heritage Committee is the solution, an appropriate solution. That is to deny the heritage permit application, which as I understand it is essentially to leave the windows where they are, and refer the matter back to Heritage Stratford. If the owner does not wish to do that, then obviously further action is required. But they've just told you that that's what they want to do. So I think the appropriate action is to deny the permit as it stands, which is for different work than they're proposing. And as Councillor Henderson suggested, refer the matter back to Heritage Stratford to work out a solution. And as you know, I spent many years on Heritage Stratford, and some of that, all of that time with Councillor Ingram and some with Councillor Gaffney. And I think both will agree that when owners, developers meet with Heritage Stratford, solutions are found that resolve things for everybody. So again, I think the question before you right now is whether or not to approve the permit as it stands. I believe you should say no to that, but also include the second part of the recommendation to direct the owner to meet with Heritage Stratford and find a solution. If you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Rourke at this time? All right. Councillor Henderson, did you want to put your motion on the floor?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that this is referred back to the Heritage Subcommittee and that the two people that, or the lady that presented tonight, or whoever they decide to designate, attend and reach a solution.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Ritzman, discussion. And I will allow it on a referral on a limited basis. Councillor Ingram, Councillor Vasilakos.
So is this going to override then the motion under 921?
To me, that would wait. That motion would just sit there because it would be up to the Heritage Subcommittee what they want to decide on. Whatever they decide on come forward. If they come forward with the same thing, then yes, we would go forward with it. But if they come up with some kind of solution, maybe they can change the window somehow or do whatever. They might come up with a better solution that's right now. So we really can't vote on this right now until we find out what their solution is. It wouldn't be fair, I don't think.
Well, doesn't the second part of the motion under 921 say, and that staff be directed to work with the property owner on the removal of the windows that were installed and on the replacement of them with doors that match the original doors in terms of color, shape, pattern, and material in a timely manner? Like, isn't that kind of what you're saying through your motion anyway?
Councillor Henderson, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, I muted again. Yeah, I guess it is basically. The only, I just want to make sure that if the owner and the heritage subcommittee come to some other kind of agreement with the windows, that it's still allowed to go forward. If we, how do you feel, Dan? You know, you've been on the heritage subcommittee.
Go ahead, Councillor Ingrid.
Thank you. So Heritage Stratford has given their opinion, and we did have a delegation from them related to their opinion on this. The windows would not be satisfactory. So I don't know that going back to them to ask about the current windows is going to change their opinion. They did give us their advisory committee opinion, and they did request that we take that into consideration.
But I thought the problem is that the owners of 265 St. David hadn't met with them. So they don't know the letter that we got today and all the reasons, and I don't know.
So again, the issue is that this was part of the designation bylaw and the designation approval, which was negotiated as part of the LPAC decision that was rendered on the property. So for Heritage Stratford to go back on the designation and on those attributes that qualified for designation, it changes what we negotiated through that LPAC decision.
All right, Councillor Vasilakos.
So just for clarity, the referral motion is to refer back not to Heritage Subcommittee, but to Heritage Stratford. Is that what you're saying, Bonnie? Just to be clear, and then I have a comment. Because Heritage and Planning Subcommittee has already reviewed this. We had a staff report that outlined what had happened. We had a representative from the owner come and tell us, one, that they didn't know they needed a heritage permit, which is on its face unbelievable, given the process that they went through to designate the property. And two, in the staff report, there was an opportunity for the owner to meet with staff and Heritage Stratford to discuss possibilities, and the owner chose not to take that opportunity, but to come directly to Heritage and Planning Subcommittee to request that we approve, that we override Heritage Stratford's recommendation. So I see the recommendation that's coming up in section 9, I think fulfills all of the discussion that we had, that Heritage Stratford had on the permit application, all of the discussion that happened at Heritage and Planning. And so I don't know why we're considering this.
All right, Councillor Seven, if I could.
Thank you. Could I just have clarification, I think from staff? The recommendation under 9.2.1, when it says working with staff, that the developer would work with staff, does that include consultation with Heritage Stratford when under the staff umbrella, or would that be different?
Ms. Bridge.
Through the mayor, thanks Councillor Seven for the question. It was intended that staff would work with Heritage Stratford, but certainly if you wish to provide further direction on that, that would work as well.
Oh, that's great, thank you. I just wanted just some clarity on that, thank you.
All right, so we have a referral. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay, opposed if any? And that is defeated. So we'll deal with that under item 9.2.1 later in the agenda. This time I'll turn it over to the clerk for the next item.
Through your worship, turning again to the agenda is item 6.3, a request for delegation from Pamela Conybeare and Ann Campion. And there is a motion that delegation of Pamela Conybeare and Ann Campion regarding the 2022 outdoor patio program be heard.
Moved by Councillor Burbach and Councillor Seven. All those in favor? Opposed if any, and it's carried. The clerk will invite our guests in. Good evening, Anne and Pamela. We'll turn it over to you. And thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, my name is Pamela Conybeare, and I'm the current chair of our BIA. Anne's going to speak first, actually, so I'm going to mute myself and hand it over to her.
Good evening, Mayor Matheson, councillors and staff. My name is Anne Campion, and my pronouns are she, her. And I'm addressing you in my capacity as the vice chair of the Downtown Stratford BIA board. We want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. And thank you on behalf of the Downtown Stratford BIA board for your work on behalf of the citizens and businesses of our community in what has been over 2 years of unanticipated challenges. We recognize decisions are not made easily and that council always has much before them. I will address our request to waive patio fees for one final season, and Pamela Conybeare, our board chair, will address our concern regarding our role as an advisory committee to council. We bring our request to waive patio fees for the 2022 patio season for the following reasons. From late fall 2021 and into early 2022, our business owners faced yet another number of months of deep restrictions. While decisions were being made to set fee structure at the council and city level, our hospitality sector was entering into survival mode yet again, serving takeout at their doors. We hope along with you for an ongoing return to operations and ability to recoup the losses from the past 2 years. And while we remain optimistic that we are slowly coming to the other side, we recognize that life beyond the pandemic will be different. As a BIA board whose majority volunteer members are small business owners ourselves, along with feedback from our members, we know it will be several years before we are able to rise above the heavy debt loads and precarious position many in our hospitality and retail sector continue to find themselves. Some of our businesses are moving with more caution to capacity limits as they continue to care for their staff's physical and mental health, respond to hiring challenges within the hospitality industry, and extend exceptional service to the broader community and guests who will visit Stratford. As a downtown BIA, we hold to a commitment to be inclusive, seeking equity in all our practices. In this, we want to encourage and support our membership in their ability to serve a fully diverse customer base. This includes those with chronic illnesses, families with small children and babies, those more vulnerable in our community, and those who simply just aren't ready for 100% capacity. We understand that for some of our guests and visitors, return to social activities will move more slowly. Many have not returned to indoor dining, nor will they be, even with 100% capacity limits this summer. Those customers too are our guests and patrons, and outdoor dining will be a major draw for them to our core, encouraging them to stay and linger at our retail shops. Our GM, Rebecca Scott, when asked for input in early March only, shared with city staff requests that fees could be waived for this season. In that email, they brought forward their report from the OBIA, or the Ontario Business Improvement Area Association, call where valuable information across BIAs is shared, assisting best practices for BIAs and their relationship with their city councils and staff. The majority of BIA polled confirmed their cities are waiving all patio fees in 2022, including extensions, to assist and support business recovery. For example, Thunder Bay, Collingwood, Guelph are waiving fees for this summer. Toronto, which has 85 BIAs within their catchment area, has committed to a 5-year Cafe TO program with a one-time application and all patio and encroachment fees waived for 2022. Anecdotally, while not a neighboring city, home to Broadway and a tourism center, New York City is also waiving their patio fees for the hospitality industry hit so deeply. On the Heritage and Planning Committee recording from their mid-March meeting, we noted that Councillor Bonnie Henderson spoke to the question of fees being waived one final season. And Councillor Jody Burbach asked if, and Jody, my apologies if I pronounced your last name incorrectly. Jody asked if input had been sought out from the BIA. Staff did not bring to that subcommittee the response that was in their hand from our GM on the OBIA call. And as the notice was short, our survey results were not yet available. On our own initiative, we surveyed our hospitality businesses and received feedback that for smaller shops and those without alcohol sales, The fee structure as put forward may stand between their desire for and ability to afford a patio. And I was able to talk with Chris this morning, and Chris had one interpretation that's correct of the survey, and we have a different interpretation, and we agreed that both interpretations are correct. For us, of 18 respondents, 12 said no, a fee was not an impediment, although within that 2 already have patios on their own private property and so are not applying for a patio. All of those businesses have alcohol sales and a larger footprint. 6, 5 with no alcohol sales, and all 6 smaller in size, indicated that yes, fee would be a challenge to them in applying for a patio, while 2 are not intending to apply for a patio, hence the number of 4 that Chris had presented to you in the additional information you received later on Friday. As a secondary option, should you choose not to waive the fees and not to follow the precedents being set by other municipalities to waive their fees, we request that you consider a tiered system of fees. This would take into consideration the ability to recoup costs of our patios with smaller numbers of seats and those shops without the alcohol sales bump up that our larger hospitality restaurants and bars have. We also seek to present you a request for council to implement a 3 or 5 year patio application process with a built-in fee structure. Using a multi-year model, auto payment could be set up much like property taxes are submitted by both businesses and residential owners. We see this as a best practice to avoid unnecessary paperwork for staff, business owners, and council time each year to review. We strongly believe this would facilitate a more fluid and efficient patio program and support a lively and active downtown Stratford, and not leave business owners wondering from year to year if they will receive their patio again. We believe this honors the work that was so generously donated and supported by those who initially designed, constructed, and installed the boardwalks and pop-ups in the summer of 2020. We do recognize that our request this evening to waive fees will impact the current budget year. Had we been provided opportunity to consult with city staff and council ahead of the December council meeting, we would have made our request much earlier. Perhaps if you choose to waive all fees, you may consider a small portion of your discretionary funds in support of our downtown businesses who seek to be a vital presence in our core and to serve our community and visitors alike. Not reaching out to us earlier before bringing forward patio and boardwalk fees and application processes is an opportunity where learning from other municipalities and our own community of business owners has been overlooked. And so in that regard, Pamela, over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to try and be really quick because some of the things I would like to share, Anne already did point out. So again, I am the chair of the board. And in addition to the insight that Anne has just shared, the BIA board is frustrated and disappointed overall by the exclusion of our role as an advisory committee to council on this matter. From the City of Stratford's own website, an advisory board and committee members provide expertise to City Council and contribute to the development of policies, programs, and initiatives that improve our quality of life. Our Board of Management is appointed by Council to serve our membership and to help provide insight to you on issues that relate to the downtown core. I'm here tonight to remind you of your obligation to draw on the expertise and experience of the BIA Board of Management that you have appointed and to use us in this capacity. Sending the proposed patio guidelines to our general manager on February 28th to share with our members and board with only 28 days to respond is not, in our opinion, seeking feedback or drawing on our expertise. It was only after this day that our staff had the chance to share the information with our members, initiate a survey, and to begin having discussions with our board. Our staff has been more than available to city staff to have these discussions, but they need to be given a reasonable amount of time to report back and to seek input from members. I will remind you that our board members are volunteers, and the majority of which are also running their own businesses full-time. We have regular board meetings once a month. In this instance, we were given less than a month to disseminate the information, seek feedback, and provide recommendations back to staff and to council. We were made aware in the initial correspondence that the guidelines were to be received by the Planning and Heritage Committee on March 14th, just 2 weeks after our staff had been sent the guidelines. And at this meeting, staff had reported to the committee that they had consulted a number of partners on the program and the guidelines, and that the BIA was issuing a survey to determine levels of interest from restaurants. Like Anne has pointed out, At this point, city staff had in fact received thoughts from our GM sent on March 1st, outlining reasons and recommendations for waiving fees for the patio program again this year. I have watched this meeting and there's no evidence there or in the meetings that this feedback was shared with the committee. During the discussion, Councillor Burbach even asked staff if the BIA had been consulted or if any business owners had been asked for feedback. While Mr. Bantock did inform the committee that the BIA was conducting a survey to gauge interest and to get feedback from restaurants, he failed to pass on the feedback provided to him by our GM on March 1st, which actually did echo both Councillor Henderson's concerns and Councillor Burbach's points made that night. And just because we are back in business, just because capacity and other public health mandates have been lifted, the reality, as Anne has pointed out, that's not so. If consultations have been happening prior to February 28th with other organizations or businesses, the BIA was not aware, and this should be considered a significant oversight on the part of city staff. Although other organizations like Invest Stratford, the Chamber of Commerce, and Destination Stratford provide excellent insights and guidance on business matters, they do not share the perspective or obligation the BIA has to advocate for restaurants in the core who are directly impacted by this decision. The BIA is in a unique position to understand the small businesses in our downtown core, and not reaching out to us before February 28th was a missed opportunity to learn from our own community and other municipalities. We would love the chance to work with city staff to help come up with progressive and creative recommendations to bring forward on the issues that matter to businesses in the downtown. But we are feeling like our opinion is not being sought until the final hour. It is our responsibility to work collaboratively and intentionally with the city on programs and issues that relate directly to our membership and to improve communication to help build a stronger community overall. We desire to work alongside you, not separately from you or against you, and we are asking to have the opportunity to do that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Coney-Bear or Ms. Campion? All right, that item comes up later in the agenda, so I thank both of you for making time to make a presentation to us this evening.
Thank you.
I'll turn it back to the clerk.
Through your worship, returning back to your regular agenda, item 7 is orders of the day. And item 7.1 is correspondence from Upper Thames River Conservation Authority 2022 budget. And there is a motion that the correspondence dated March 4th, 2022 from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority with respect to the 2022 levy for the city of Stratford be received by City Council.
Moved by Councillor Gaffney, second by Councillor Vasilakos. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried.
Through your worship, item 7.2 is a resolution for AMO call to action regarding CN Rail Drainage Act. And there is a staff recommendation that council endorse the AMO call to action regarding CN Rail and drainage, and that the mayor be requested to send a letter to CN expressing Stratford's concern with CN's position on the Drainage Act.
Thank you. Councillor Ritzman moving, second by Councillor Vasilakos. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried.
Item 7.3 is a resolution regarding Active Transportation Fund 2022 Infrastructure Canada. And there is a staff recommendation that the city submit applications to the Active Transportation Fund 2022-2023 to obtain up to 60% of the eligible project costs for the multi-use trail rehabilitation project, Erie Street in brackets Lauren Avenue to city limits. That the city submit applications to the Active Transportation Fund 2022-2023 to obtain up to 60% of the eligible project costs for the bike lane and sidewalk extension project and McCarthy Road, in brackets Mornington Street to Romeo Street, and that the city submit applications to the Active Transportation Fund 2022-2023 to obtain up to 60% of the eligible project costs for the multi-use trail project, Duro Street and CH Meyer Boulevard, and in brackets Romeo Street to Devon Street.
Moved by Councillor Burbach, second by Councillor Ingram. Discussion. Councillor Burbach, Councillor Seven.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Mr. Botsma for his report and for staff for bringing forward these 3 projects. These are projects that the Active Transportation Advisory Committee has been discussing for a number of years, and we've prioritized. So just really appreciate that staff has done the work to bring these forward. And the Active Transportation Advisory Committee really does feel that these are key elements to our active transportation system, and that they will link up somewhat of a patchwork system that we have right now. So very glad to see these projects moving forward. And I do think it's an important investment for the city as far as active transportation goes. So thank you.
Councillor Seven.
Thank you. I was just wondering from staff, how, if this funding wasn't achieved, would these projects be something that, like the priority for projects 1, 2, 3, were these something that were coming up in the near future anyway, or is this something that's sort of moved further closer to now if this is approved?
Through your worship, we do have a long list of items that do have priority, and we rejig what projects we anticipate for the next year based on what funding we have available. The sheer dollar value for these projects would probably make them a few years away before they actually would be able to be implemented.
Okay, thank you. And would this funding, if it was successful, would it commit us? It says it'd be phased over 3 years. Would it commit us to a certain time constraint to get this completed, or would we not know that until we were successful?
Through your worship, Nick Sheldon, the project manager, is on the line and maybe you can respond to this. Nick, thank you.
Through your worship, to Councillor Seven. So the report lists that the work has to be done within 5 years. There's no commitment if we're successful. It would be this, if we became successful, we would come back to council to advise us to complete the necessary paperwork, but there's no obligation immediately. And we stage the projects in our application. We've started to prepare them, but we haven't submitted them. So we've done them over 3 years in the event we were successful for more than one. But I would anticipate lots of municipalities are going to be applying. So the odds of getting more than one would be fairly slim.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vasilakos and then Councillor Burback.
And I was just going to further to what Councillor Seven and Councillor Burback had said on the two projects, the one on McCarthy and the one for Duro Street. Council had already approved those projects. They're council approved projects. They were actually slated to be done. I forget, it might have been 2018. I forget now, but those projects got bumped when we had to do Huntington Street crossing because of all of the issues with the school, with the children crossing at the school. So it's really nice to see these projects coming up, and as Councillor Burback pointed out, a really important part of encouraging active transportation and as a transportation mode is having is making sure you have those linkages done. And when you actually see the north part of the city and then also the east part of the city where you see long sections of cycling infrastructure, and then but then with these little gaps, I think it's really important. And I also think that for all of the people that work in the East End and who work either at the mall or going out to the East End, a really safe way to get across the city using active transportation is really important. So I and also the Erie Street, that multi-use trail has needed work for an awfully long time, and it's a really important linkage out to the employment area. So I'm really quite excited to see that these projects are still top of mind and that there may be some funding to help us get them done.
Councillor Burback, then I have Councillor Clifford.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say a quick apology to Mr. Sheldon. I gave Mr. Botsma credit for that report, and actually you did all the work. So thank you, Nick. Success
has many fathers. All right, Councillor Clifford.
I was just going to ask, is there a priority project here? And that, is it helping to apply for all three if we're not going to be successful? Is it more helpful to only apply for the one that's a priority? I'm just asking out of curiosity.
through your worship. I don't see it being a disadvantage of applying for more than one. It's not really an option to give them our priority. Yeah, like it's 400 million throughout Canada, so it's not per population based for the applications, but assuming it was, it would, we would maybe get 400,000. That's kind of the ratio for our population versus the country. So it's up to council's decision to decide one or three, but the work's already been done for all three. So it's more or less getting your permission, and then we would go ahead with three.
All right, Councillor Henderson.
I think it would work more in our advantage that they can see that we have three major areas that need to be done, that they would think, oh, well, let's give them at least one.
Through your worship, I'm not sure. I think, well, we went with three because we knew these projects were on the bike and pedestrian master plan, and they've been in council and some committee things, and we've also seen that some of the existing infrastructure in that area is deficient. So that was sort of our strategy.
All right, the motion's been moved and seconded. Is there anything further? If not, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Sheldon. Mr. Crinklow. Clerk.
Through your worship, item 7.4 is a resolution for subdivision agreement for Knightsbridge Phase 1. And there is a staff recommendation that the mayor and clerk or designates be authorized on behalf of the corporation of the city of Stratford to enter into a subdivision servicing agreement with Sifton Properties Limited for the development of the Knightsbridge Phase 1 subdivision.
Moved by Councillor Bunting, seconded by Councillor Ritzma. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The record will show that Councillor Gaffney did not take part in the discussion or the vote.
Through your worship, item 7.5 is a resolution for Court Security and Prisoner Transport Program 2022. And there is a motion that the corporation of the city of Stratford enter into an Ontario transfer payment agreement with Her Majesty the Queen, right of Ontario, as represented by the Solicitor General for a term of 1 year to December 31st, 2022.
By Councillor Bunting and seconded by Councillor Burback. Prisoner Transport Program for 2022 be forwarded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried.
Item 7.6 is a resolution regarding 2021 al fresco report. And there is a motion that the report titled 2021 Stratford al fresco, prepared by Destination Stratford, be received for information and referred to city staff for review. And I will note that Zach Gribble, Executive Director of Destination Stratford, is available if should there be any questions.
Councillor Gaffney moving, seconded by Councillor Henderson, that through al fresco report be prepared, be received for information, referred to city staff for review. Discussion. Councillor Ingram.
Yes, sorry, just a question for Mr. Gribble. Based on what we just heard from the BIA, I'm wondering about his recommendation number, or Destination Stratford's recommendation number 10, which says continue the boardwalk patio extension program and implement cost recovery fees with reintroducing regular patio license square footage and boardwalk setup fees. I'm wondering, that's in direct conflict with the recommendation that we just heard from the BIA, and I'm wondering if Mr. Gribble could speak to that.
Through your worship, thank you, Councillor Ingram, for the question. We do see things a little bit differently on this particular item. I do think where council has landed, which is regular patio fees, including square footage, and not doing boardwalk fees, is actually a preferred route. But the long-term vision is to make sure that this is sustainable, and there's going to be a period of time as we continue through economic recovery where some fees make sense from a cost recovery standpoint. As you all know, I advocate very strongly for economic recovery, but I also want to make sure that we're in an environment that the boardwalk program and alfresco program can continue. And I did just want to mention and thank council and the city for a lot of quite unusual projects over the last couple of years, and recognizing that some of these projects ultimately put more strain on city budget over time. Both of these projects do that. So my intention with putting this in here was to try to strike a balance as we hopefully come out of pandemic restrictions. Anecdotally, from ticket sales at various attractions and hotel accommodations, it does look like we will have a strong patio season. Of course, anything can change, and it can change rapidly. So my recommendation would actually be to include the patio license fees and regular patio fees, but definitely do not include anything for parking, which was a discussion previously at a previous discussion around these types of fees for boardwalks. And I like the current solution, which has no boardwalk setup fees, but I would advocate for those to be introduced perhaps next year if we're in full recovery. There will be ongoing costs associated with this program. There will be repairs, maintenance, et cetera. This is an extremely popular program. And again, what I care about is to make sure that this exists for years to come.
Thank you. Anything further? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you.
Through your worship, item 7.7 is a proclamation for World Autism Day. And there is a motion that Stratford City Council hereby proclaims April 2nd, 2022 as World Autism Day in the city of Stratford.
Councillor Henderson and Councillor Ritzma moving and seconding that we proclaim World Autism Day. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Through your worship, item 7.8 is a resolution regarding 2022 tax rates and tax policy background information. And there is a staff recommendation that the report titled 2022 tax rates and tax policy background information be received for information, and that the 2022 tax rate and ratio bylaw be adopted as presented.
Councillor Baffy and Councillor Vasilakos moving and seconding. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Thank you.
Item 7.9 is a resolution regarding homelessness prevention program, and there is a staff recommendation that the report titled Homelessness Prevention Plan be received, that the Delegated Authority Bylaw 135-2017 as amended be further amended to delegate authority to the Director of Social Services and/or the Chief Administrative Officer or their respective delegates to approve and execute the submission of the HPP investment plan due before April 15th on a yearly basis, and any related amendments or extensions between the Corporation of the City of Stratford and the Province of Ontario, and that the Mayor and Clerk or their respective delegates be authorized to sign the transfer payment agreement with the Province of Ontario on behalf of the Corporation of the City of Stratford.
By Councillor Ritzma, second by Councillor Henderson. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried.
Item 8 is business for which previous notice has been given. Item 8.1 is a resolution regarding removal of the holding provision at 173 Huron Street. And there is a staff recommendation that zoning bylaw 10-2022 be amended by removing the holding provision from the property known municipally as 173 Huron Street for the following reasons. The conditions outlined in the holding provision when the H can be removed have been satisfied. Removal of the holding provision will allow for development in conformity with the City of Stratford official plan, and removal of the holding provision is consistent with the provincial policy statement.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Bunting. Discussion? Councillor Henderson?
Yes, I asked at the last meeting if the concerns of the neighbor had been addressed, and I believe Christian, we're going to look into that. Or maybe it was the planner, Allison, can't remember.
Sorry, through your worship, I believe the manager of planning, Alyssa Bridge, had mentioned that. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you.
Through your worship, thanks for the question, Councillor Henderson. So I've also understand the chief building official is here this evening, and he may be able to speak to the issue a little bit further. So the holding provision related to 173 Huron Street required closure of a previous building permit that had been applied for on that property. Part of the building permit was related to site grading and drainage. And as part of that closing of that building permit, the property owner did submit certification from an engineering firm that work had been undertaken, which is why staff have closed that building permit and are recommending lifting of the holding provision.
All right. Any other questions with regard to that item? If not, it's been moved and seconded, Mr. Bantock. So we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried.
Through your worship, item 9 is reports of the standing committees, and item 9.1 is report of the Infrastructure, Transportation, and Safety Committee, and there are 2 items listed. 9.1.1, Drinking Water Quality Management Standard 2021 Infrastructure Review, and 9.1.2, Drinking Water Quality Management Standard 2021 Management Review. And there is a motion that the report of the Infrastructure, Transportation, and Safety Committee dated March 28, 2022 be adopted as printed.
By Councillor Vasilakos, and second by Councillor Burback. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 9.2 is report of the Planning and Heritage Committee, and there are 3 items listed. 9.2.1, Heritage Alteration Permit Application for 265 St. David Street. At 9.2.2, Sign Bylaw Variance for the Rotary Club of Stratford. And 9.2.3, 2022 Outdoor Patio Program. And there is a motion that the report of the Planning and Heritage Committee dated March 28, 2022 be adopted as printed.
Councillor Ritzman, you're moving.
I would wonder through you, your worship, whether we could take those 3 items separately, please.
Okay, but you'll move it. Take a seconder for that as well. Councillor Henderson. All right. So we'll go to item 9.2.1, which is the Heritage Alteration Permit for application for 265 St. David Street. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Henderson, or sorry, Councillor Ingram. Oh, sorry. All right. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. We'll move on to item 9.2.2, which is signed by law variance for the Rotary Club of Stratford. Moved by, it's been moved in second, sorry, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Item 9.2.3 is the 2022 Outdoor Patio Program, moved and seconded previously by Councillors Ritzman and Henderson. Discussion. Councillor Henderson and Councillor Ingram.
I would move that we would waive the patio fees this season and relook at it for next year after we hear from the BIA and the downtown businesses how they made out over the next year. And you know, maybe we'd have to look at it for 1 more year, but for sure we waive it this year.
Councillor Henderson, the report was moved. That included the recommendation, and you were listed as the seconder for that. So we can't now have a motion that's contrary to what's already been moved. Would you like to withdraw your seconding of that motion?
Sure.
Okay, would somebody else like to second that motion?
Sorry.
Anyone else willing to second it? So then we'll have no motion on the floor based on not finding a seconder for that. Is there a motion that somebody would like to put forward? Councillor Henderson.
I'd like to move that we waive the fees for the 2022 patio fees, and that the rest of the motion about the tents could be included as part of that motion still.
Is that clear with the clerk? Okay, that's got some anonymous seconder for that. Is Councillor Burback. Discussion. Councillor Gaffney.
My apologies, your worship, but I'm trying to gather from the information that's in front of me how we got talking about fees and stuff. I don't see, am I confused on something? Or is this 9.2.3?
That's correct. So the program patio has guidelines.
Yeah, okay, sorry, my apologies.
Okay. Anything further? Councillor Clifford, then Councillor Burback.
Yeah, I apologize. I've been gone for a while, but how much are the costs? Like, and is it in the budget? If we don't have the fees, is that in our 2022 budget?
Mr. Bantock?
So through your worship, no, that is not currently covered in the budget. So any decision to waive fees would have a direct impact on this year's operating budget.
Councillor Burback and Councillor Ingram.
Thank you. From some of the other municipalities or some of the other BIAs, I think they reported that other municipalities have been able to access some COVID funding. And I don't know, maybe that was something they had left over from previous years, but I'm just wondering if there's any opportunity for us to have similar COVID funding, or if there's anything that staff might know is in the offing.
Mr. Bantock.
Through your worship, my understanding is that those funds are not currently available for something of this nature, but perhaps if the Director of Corporate Services is available, she might be able to clarify and provide any further information on that.
Ms. Kruger.
Worship, can you please repeat the question?
I think the question is really, what are the amount of fees if we waive these that would be coming back to the city, and where would we take them from since it's not in the original budget? Is that a good summarization of the question, I think?
Plus, if there's any grants available under COVID.
Yes.
No, under the grants question, there isn't anything available that we're aware of at this point in time. As far as how much the fees are, I'd have to do a bit of digging. I'm sorry, I don't have that information available at my fingertips. It's within our corporate services budget, but I just have to do a bit of digging. As far as funding sources or places where we could take it, I could certainly come back with some options for council if that's the direction.
Thank you. Councillor Ingram, then Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. So based on the discussions that I've been involved in the BIA and the presentations that we've heard today, I don't think that they're asking for no fees. I mean, certainly there's some businesses that would absolutely appreciate it and can use that relief. But I'm wondering, just as a way for us to begin the reintroduction and to be able to track the patio licenses, I'm wondering if we implement the licensing fee and that alone. And that way it allows the city to recoup some of the fees that we're going to be losing. It gradually reintroduces the fee structure for the boardwalk and patios. And then it allows us to have a tracking system as well, because they would have to apply for that license. Just as a way to sort of mediate between nothing coming into the city and the businesses carrying the brunt of all costs. Just wondering how that might work.
Either Mr. Bantock or Ms. Kruger, do you have any thoughts on that? Mr. Bantock.
Through your worship, so certainly if that's the direction of council, that can be undertaken. With the fees and charges bylaw having been approved in December with the standard fees, that is the current fees in place. So any direction, should council wish to provide it, can be done so to adjust that.
I believe the next I had Councillor Henderson, then I saw Councillor Vasilakos and Councillor Ritzma and Councillor Beatty and Councillor Ingram. Did you have a supplementary to your last question, Councillor Ingram? Please continue.
Sorry, and my apologies, I did misspeak. The BIA, their original request is to waive fees. Their secondary request is the tiered fee structure. So I am kind of speaking to the tiered fee structure.
Thank you. All right. Councillor Henderson, Vasilakos, Ritzma, Beatty.
So I'm just looking at the analysis from 2021. It said the regular council meeting, this would have resulted in a revenue of approximately $37,484. So it's probably around that same amount that we would not be receiving.
Thank you. Mr. Bantock?
Through your worship, so just to clarify, so that number is based off of that approved tier structure that's contained in the report. That was the fee structure that was approved last year. The reason there is not an analysis of the current standard business license fee is due to the square footage being involved, because we haven't had that fee in place while this program has been in place. So we weren't able to identify an accurate potential revenue with that involved.
All right, Councillor Vasilakos.
I am in favor of providing relief to businesses, especially those businesses that do not have a liquor license, and for whom it's going to take a lot longer to recover from the pandemic, given the markup that there is with alcohol and the longer hours and etc. But I am struggling a little bit with having clarity on impact, source of funding, because we don't have discretionary funds. Like, we can maybe take it from the parking reserve. I don't know. Part of the struggle is I don't know what the ramifications are, what our options are, and where the money will come from. And so I'm wondering whether we can defer this item to the next meeting so we can have a report back from staff on some of the questions that we're asking and some of the impact.
I'll let the clerk answer that question.
Through your worship, it would be staff's preference if we could have a decision made tonight, only understanding that we are within a month of patio season opening, and we want to ensure that we're able to effectively and efficiently roll out the program to everyone who plans to apply.
I would offer, I would hold a special meeting if it becomes problematic for members of council this week, if we become bogged down on information. So Councillor Ritzma, and then Councillor Beattie, then Councillor Clifford, then Councillor Seven, and Councillor Ingram.
And thank you. Through you, your worship, I believe Councillor Ingram was referring to it, and I believe Councillor Vasilakos also supported the idea. I would support the idea of a tiered approach as a gradual move back into hopefully some form of normalcy. And that was brought forward by the presentation by Ann Campion. So if we could have some information with regards to what the tiered approach would be, what the financial impact, I certainly would support that.
Mr. Bantock.
Through your worship, so the current tiered approach that has been brought forward by staff and as mentioned was previously approved was that contained in the report provided for information that did include fees related to parking occupancy, but it was the tiered approach that was brought forward at that time. There is hesitancy in identifying a tiered approach related to menu items, similarly to concerns in the past about hours of operation, and staff vetting that and enforcing that and moving forward with the program. So that a tiered approach related to those items wouldn't be preferred.
All right. Councillor Clifford, Beattie, Seven, and Ingram.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I was going to ask, in the grant contingency in the grant program, is there anything in there? I was away, so I'm just curious. Do we have any extra in the grant in the contingency for the grant program?
Ms. Kruger.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So this will be coming forward shortly for council to look at, but I believe that there was about $20,000 or $21,000 remaining in the contingency fund, as well as a little bit of extra funding in the reserve from the prior year. So there potentially that could be a funding source for this particular project if council wants to direct staff to look at those waivers.
Thank you. Councillor Beattie, Councillor Seven, Councillor Ingram.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was I was hopeful that there might be what I'll call a hybrid model here, not an all or nothing approach. And I think we, as several other councillors have indicated, this option in some capacity would probably be the option that would provide the opportunity for those that do need some assistance to do so, and those that are able to operate without the assistance, we can carry forward with a slow and steady approach of recovering that. I don't necessarily have the answer on how that hybrid model looks, but that would be my my support.
Thank you. Councillor Seven.
Thank you. I was just hoping for some clarity. Would this, the motion that's on the floor, would this be similar to what we ended up doing last year, just waiving, like, are those the fees we're talking about here? Or are we talking about something different?
Yes.
Okay, so I certainly do support the motion. I think we should be supporting the restaurants and businesses the same as we did last year. I think, you know, unfortunately, last March, we were also optimistic that things would be very well moving and opened up, you know, throughout the summer and everything. And I think, you know, as much as I hope that is the case, I think we need to be ready, and I'd hate to see us coming back this May to backstep. So I think you know, I feel it's appropriate to waive the fees again this year, and then have a discussion after this year about what things will look like moving forward after this year. So.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram.
Thank you. I see that Zach Gribble is still here. Do we still have Anne or Pamela from the BIA also with us?
Through your worship, yes, we do.
Is it possible to bring them back into the meeting and for them to speak to potential funding sources or grant opportunities?
If I may, if they are aware of them, well, let's start with Zach, because if not, we'll need a motion to have another delegation. So, Mr. Gribble, could you come on and chat a little bit about if you're aware of any funding?
Sure. Through your worship, there's a variety of tourism relief funding available. It would be retroactive at this point. These things take a significant amount of time. So it would be applied for, and then probably in a number of months, you'd find out whether it was successful or not. I'm not aware of any short-term grants. I will say, having been involved with some of the granting to date to support al fresco and outdoor dining, it's very challenging to get grants for things that already exist. There's a lot of, and supporting the management of current existing operations. It might exist, but I'm not aware of anything that would be a great fit for supporting the existing program.
Right. Councillor Ingram, follow up, and then Councillor Burback, Vasilakos.
Thank you. Is it possible to hear from Anne and Pamela as well, just to get a well-rounded answer to that question?
Sure. If you'd like to make a motion, maybe heard again.
I would, please. Yeah, thank you.
Seconder for that, Councillor Henderson. All those in favor? That's good. All right. Anne or Pamela, do you have an answer with regard to funding and known projects or known grant programs?
Thank you, Mayor. We have asked our GM to do some work on this, and that's, for us, that's one of the challenges that we're facing, of that really shortened timeline, which was connected to Pamela's conversation about involving us earlier on, so we can be part of consultation with you and bring better better solutions forward to you, and including the conversation around the tiered system. We do have some ideas. We'd love to put a presentation before you, but our first request is this year to have them waived if that is possible. Appreciating that might not be possible. That's why we talked about the tiered, and we would like to be a part of that conversation with city staff for a tiered conversation moving forward, because we do think it's very possible and we could be supports in that. But we have asked I think simply put, we've asked our GM to do some work on that, and there may potentially be some grants, but would agree with what Zach just said, also that it's harder sometimes to do it for programs that are in place. So Pamela, would you like to add?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Echoing some of that, but also saying that we set aside money in our own budget to help support some of these things when we know about them ahead of time. For example, we spent money from our budget on all of the planters that went on the boardwalks. We could spend money on covering the cost of the anti-slip coating that needs to be applied. That isn't something that was presented to us or asked about in terms of, are we able to contribute to the program financially at all? So there are opportunities for us to help support the program in other ways. And we're aware that there are funds from the Tourism Relief Grant from FedDev that could also support programs like this. Would it apply to something that's established? Maybe not, but could it apply to enhancing and covering some of the costs? Potentially, but we haven't really been given the opportunity to explore these ideas yet.
Councillor Seven, thank you very much to you both for offering your thoughts. Councillor Seven.
Thank you. I did have a question for either Anne or Pamela, just regarding, I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't have the answer, that's okay. I just was wondering about your take on the impact of the change from $2 to $5 million liability for this patio season, and how significant that is or is not.
Do you want to go ahead, Anne?
Yeah, I would, because I'm a business that would potentially be impacted by that. And I'm in conversations with my insurance company to see if that's another thing that's viable. So there's again, 28 days is not quite long enough to have all the answers for you we would have loved to have had. But yes, there will be an impact.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Councillor Vasilakos.
This is just to Councillor Clifford asked about the community grants program and whether there was money there. I would really like if we did not, we put that money aside because not-for-profit and arts and sports and social institutions in the city come to us for money, and sometimes they need mid-year funding. And I really would not want to see us using that reserve for a business recovery or business development. I would like to link it to maybe money that goes to some other economic development piece, rather than taking it from our not-for-profit organizations that are themselves also struggling to keep afloat and recover from the pandemic, and then to continue to provide services to the community. So it would not be my preference to take the money from that reserve.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I would say is that we do need to realize there are restaurants in other parts of the community that will be lining up immediately after this is approved, if there's relief, and they're going to ask to be able to use their parking lots, their lawns. They're going to ask for picnic tables from the city. They're going to want to make sure they're exempt from fees also. So I'd like us to think on a holistic basis. With regard to this, I've already received an email popped up on my screen from a restaurateur who said, just remember those of us on Ontario Street that are further out that need support also. All right, Councillor Ingram.
Thank you. So do we have a motion on the floor?
Mr. Bantock, want to read back what the original motion was?
Through your worship, my understanding is that the current motion on the floor is that the 2022 business license fees for outdoor cafes be waived for 2022, and then the remaining recommendation regarding the amendments to policy P33.
Okay. All right. Councillor Burbeck.
Thank you. I just had a question either for Councillor Ingram or maybe for staff, that she had suggested that we just do the patio fee. So would it be a flat fee, or is that one of those sliding scale fees? Like I wasn't quite sure what that would include. So maybe if we can get some clarification on that idea.
Mr. Bantock.
Through your worship, my understanding, and Councillor Ingram, perhaps you could confirm, but my understanding was that the suggestion was to have the $619 flat rate outdoor cafe fee remain for 2022, and it would be the $2.65 per square foot that would be waived for 2022.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I don't know if Councillor Henderson would consider amending the motion to include that fee.
That was my motion, sorry. The motion is, oh no, sorry, I was saying no fees. No, not this year. I think maybe next year we could do that.
Councillor Clifford.
Yeah, I believe that if you serve alcohol and like, there are businesses that are going to do okay. I just came from Florida. I know Florida may not be the best example, but believe me, everything is open. People are buying, if anyone's been down there. So it would be nice if we could help the small restaurants that need help. Some of the large ones sell alcohol, who I know personally and I do business with every day. It's not going to hurt them one bit. So I think, in my opinion, if we could help those that need help, like Councillor Ingram was talking about, I believe, and Councillor Petey brought it up too, I think that is the proper way to go, because we just had a budget with over 7% increase. We've got to be really careful as a council, just coming up with these extra dollars. And as Herr Matheson said, once we open this up, it's going to open the floodgates. So I think we have to be extremely careful. And I don't know if we had a special council meeting on this. I think we need a bit more information personally. That's my opinion. It's hard to make a decision with all what all the costs are and what all the ramifications are.
Councillor Ingram, then Councillor Henderson.
Can I make a second suggestion? Instead of just charging the regular patio license fees, because Councillor Clifford is correct, there are larger patios that serve alcohol, and they definitely could manage some of these fees. If we were to waive all fees for patios less than or 12 seats or less, and if you are 12 seats, or sorry, waive all fees for 12 seats or less, and for any patio 13 seats or more, they pay their full fees. Does that strike a balance instead of, only charging the regular patio license fees, because it does give a hand up to those larger patios and some of those restaurants that do sell alcohol. So for the smaller cafes and the restaurants or coffee shops that can only have smaller patios, 12 seats or less, they waive their fees. And then everybody that has a larger one, 13 seats or more, they pay their full fees. Is that, I mean, that's another way to strike that balance. I'm just trying to think solutions.
Okay, if I could, I think we're gone in a complete circle. I think we're short on information, and I think we should refer this back to staff, and we can have a special meeting. They can look into the grants to see whether there is any type of funding. They can provide us the actual costs associated with each element of the patios. They can give you a sense of the number of patios we had last year and the type of fees that were paid, so that everyone would know if we would have charged last year what it would be. And then that'll allow us a broader picture. They'll also probably be able to tell you how many people outside of the core will then are going to ask for some form of support, either in being their site plan being out of compliance for the year, or Parks and Recreation loaning them picnic tables like we've done in the past, so that we can try to have a solution that works for everybody. Would that be acceptable if we sent that back? Councillor Henderson, are you moving a referral on that? Councillor Vasilakos?
I will refer it, but I would like also to hear like Councillor Ingram's idea of 12 square feet or less. I'd like to know if that will actually cover, because to me, like Ball Sex is a pretty large one. I don't know if it's over 12 feet, but I mean, if we're trying to only accommodate the ones that don't sell alcohol, then we need to ensure what their footage is. Like how many are that, you know? No?
I was talking about seats. So the number of people it can accommodate, not this size, not the square footage.
Oh, I thought you said 12 square feet.
No, 12 seats.
Oh, 12. Oh, 12 seats. Oh, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, Councillor Vasilakos, and
I'll make the referral, but to include in that report back the feasibility of either doing it by size, like number of seats of the patio, or whether we can do it by alcohol versus no alcohol. And when I said times, I didn't mean we would do it by times. I meant that quite often if you sell alcohol, you have a much longer day, but it wasn't part of what I was asking for. But if we could include those two options and what that would look like in the report, I'd appreciate it.
seconded by Councillor Ritzma. Anything further? If not, Councillor Seven, do you have one point of clarification before?
Yes, please. I just want to clarify there will be the options and the information for waiving fees altogether as part of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Through your worship, item 9.3 is report of the Finance and Labor Relations Committee, and there are 5 items listed. Item 9.3.1, Stratford Economic Enterprise Development Corporation, update October 1 to December 31, 2021. Item 9.3.2, 2022 Ontario Regulation 284/09, excluded expenses. Item 9.3.3, development charges deferral, payment plan and rate freeze interest rates. 9.3.4, reserves and reserve funds review. And 9.3.5, financial statements and commentary for Rhizome Festival Hydro Services, Inc. and Festival Hydro, Inc. for the period ending December 31st, 2021. And there is a motion that the report of the Finance and Labor Relations Committee dated March 28, 2022 be adopted as printed.
Councillor Gaffney will move as chair. Seconder, Councillor Bunting. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item number 10 is notice of intent, and there is none scheduled. Item number 11 is reading of the bylaws, and there are 7 listed. 11.1, delegation of authority to execute agreements related to payment plans, rate freezes as required by the Development Charges Act. 11.2, authorize entering into an execution of subdivision servicing agreement for phase 1 of Knightsbridge subdivision. 11.3, to amend zoning bylaw 10-2022 to remove holding provision from lands known municipally as 173 Huron Street. 11.4, to set tax ratios, rates, and reductions for 2022. 11.5, to authorize entering into an execution of Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement for continuation of the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Program for 2022. 11.6, authorize execution of Transfer Payment Agreement for funding under the Homelessness Prevention Program. And 11.7, delegation of authority to approve and execute submission of the Homelessness Prevention Program Investment Plan. And these bylaws may be passed collectively upon unanimous vote of council present.
Bylaw 11.2 needs to be taken separately for Councillor Gaffney because of his pecuniary interest. Is there anyone else wishing to be taken separately? Councillor Seven?
Could we have 11.3 separately, please?
Yes, we can. Anything further? If not, would someone move the balance of the bylaws be taken collectively? Councillor Ingram, Councillor Vasilakos, all those in favor? So they've been taken collectively for bylaws 11.1, 4, 5, 6, and 7. First and second reading for those bylaws. Councillor Bunting and Councillor Henderson moving first and second reading on bylaws 11.1, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There's no discussion. All those in favor? And that's carried. Third and final reading, moved by Councillor Gaffney and seconded by Councillor Ritzma for bylaws 11-1, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Can I have someone move first and second reading of bylaw 11.2, please? Councillor Clifford and Councillor Beattie. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. Third and final reading of bylaw 11.2. Councillor Bunting and Councillor Burback moving and seconding. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. And the record will show that Councillor Gaffney did not take part in discussion or vote. 11.3, a mover and a seconder, please, for first and second reading. Councillor Ingram and Councillor Clifford, thank you. For bylaw 11.3 to be read a first and second time. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? 2 opposed, that's carried. And a third and final time, moving bylaw 11.3, Councillor Bunting, Councillor Beattie. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? 2 opposed, and that's carried.
Through your worship, item 12 is the consent agenda, and council is to advise if there are any items wish to be considered.
Seeing no hands at this time, we'll go to new business. And under new business, I see Councillor Ingram, Burback. Councillor Ingram.
Yes, thank you. I have a question and then a note. Do we have our Director of Community Services with us tonight?
No, we do not.
Okay, perhaps maybe our CIO knows this, but for any major events that we host within a city facility, do we have an emergency management plan? Do we know on the application form, is there a requirement that somebody that's trained in first aid is on site?
Ms. Thompson.
Through your worship, could you just clarify the question about an emergency plan, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me give you the background. Yesterday, I was at my son's basketball games, which were held at a facility in Toronto that runs multiple games continuously. So very similar to our curling event that is currently happening at the rec complex. And there happened to be a young player who went headfirst into a steel beam and was cut open. There was nobody on site that was trained in first aid. There was no emergency management plan, no way to get this boy to the hospital without calling the ambulance, which took an hour and 10 minutes to get there because we were in Toronto. And I do understand that a very similar incident actually happened today at the curling tournament at the rec facility. And there was no one trained in first aid on site, and the ambulance was called, but the person attending the curling tournament did actually get taken by hospital, by car to the hospital this morning. So I'm just wondering, like, what our emergency management plan is whether we request these, whether we request that somebody be trained in first aid when we're hosting these types of events in our city facilities.
Thank you. Let me take that back and I will get some additional information on that and report back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Councillor Burback, I believe I saw your hand next.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, my hand was actually up for the consent agenda, so I don't know if is it too late to go back?
No, we can do that for sure. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to put forward the Township of Woolwich resolution letter for mental health supports. And basically the gist of it is that the Council of the Township of Woolwich requests that the Government of Ontario provide stable, reliable, and predictable funding for mental health organizations in their 2022 budget. And a lot of their letter talks about the challenges that mental health services has already have. They were overwhelmed before COVID hit, but since COVID, they've just been overwhelmed, and more funding from the province would really be critical at this point. So I'd like to bring that forward.
Seconder for that, Councillor Seven. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Councillor Seven, I saw your hand next. Was it similar to that?
Thank you. That was to second the motion. Sorry, I was just
Thank
a little early.
All right. Anything further on the consent agenda or under new business? If not, we'll take a motion to adjourn to reconvene in Community Services Committee. In 5 minutes, we'll take a little break. Councillor Clifford and Councillor Burback. All those in favor? And that's carried. And Councillor Beatty, you'll be in the chair.
Just wait on Councillor Ingram and then we'll get started. Good evening. I'm going to call the Community Services Committee meeting to order. Item 2 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Item 3 is subcommittee minutes from our March 17th meeting, which you have before you. Item 4 is our delegations, for which we have none scheduled. Item 5 is the report of the Director of Community Services, which item 5.1 being the license of land use renewal agreement with Hydro One Corridor at the Packham Ball Diamonds. We do have a staff recommendation for your consideration. Moved by Councillor Gaffney, second by Councillor Bunting. If there's any questions or concerns, if not, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Item 6 is for your information. Item 6.2 is, item 6.1 is department updates for your information. And item 6.2 is the advisory committee and outside board minutes from the Board of Parks Management minutes of December 6th. And finally, we have our adjournment. Motion by Councillor Burback and second by Councillor Ritzma. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, everyone.
I'd like to call the Social Services Committee to order. Does any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. There's the subcommittee minutes are available from our March 15th subcommittee meeting. Number 4 is delegations. There's none scheduled. And number 5 is report of the manager of Ontario Works from the Salvation Army tax program, Stratford and North Perth, that the mayor and clerk or the respective delegates be authorized to enter into 2 agreements with the governing council of the Salvation Army in Canada to deliver the tax program in Stratford and North Perth as outlined in the agreements, and that the director of social services be authorized to execute annual renewal agreements with the governing council of the Salvation Army in Canada to deliver the tax program in Stratford and North Perth, subject to no contract performance issues or amendments to funding identified by the city. So, Councillor Gaffney's moving that and Councillor Smith seconding it. Any questions or comments? Kim, did you want to just do a brief outline, like, you know, what are we up to? Over 600 applications now that are using this, but of course there's always more that we can reach out to help.
Thank you, through the chair. This is an ongoing agreement that we have with the local Salvation Armies to complete income tax for low-income individuals. It's based out of Stratford and Listowel, and we're asking it can be utilized throughout the year for those in need of having their income tax completed. And we're asking to go back into agreement to extend the agreement with them.
Thank you. Councillor Gaffney, you had a question?
I did, Madam Chair. Why just the 2 jurisdictions? Why not the other ones that are part of this group, part of our
CMSM. Thank you, through the chair.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, just to clarify, this is available to all residents of City of Stratford, Town of St. Mary's, and Perth County. The 2 locations are specific to Listowel and Stratford. I apologize for not clarifying that.
Thanks for clearing that out for me. Thank you.
And then just to clarify it a bit more, before the deadline used to be, was it the end of March or something? Trying to think. Anyway, it's extended now, which is a great thing because, you know, some of us aren't fast at getting our paperwork together, so that'll work out great. And please share it with people that you know could use this help. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Great, passed unanimously. Thank you very much. So let me get back here. So now I'm looking for adjournment. Councillor Bunting and Councillor Burback. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Oh, I guess I should have asked any opposed, but it looked like everybody voted for it, so.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'd like to call the Planning and Heritage meeting to order. Item number 2, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Item 3, delegations. There are none scheduled. Item 4 is report of the manager of planning. Item 4.1 is planning report zone change amendment Z15-21 with respect to the address of 555 Downey Street. And I believe Mr. Bannon is present to make a staff presentation. Mr. Bannon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am available. Unfortunately, I don't have screen sharing set up right now. So if I can either have that enabled or if the clerk can bring the PowerPoint up on the screen, that would also work.
Through the chair, Jeff, if you want to give screen sharing a try now, you should be able to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. So zone change amendment Z15-21 was submitted by Baker Planning Group for the lands known municipally as 555 Downey Street. The application is requesting to rezone the lands from a neighborhood commercial C1 zone to a special C1 zone to add a retail stores of permitted use with a maximum gross floor area of 95 square meters, to permit parking spaces to be a minimum of 2.4 meters in width and 5.6 meters in length, to permit a minimum rear yard setback of 1.5 meters, a minimum parking setback from Downey Street of 6.5 meters, a parking rate of 1 space for every 32 square meters for the retail store, and 1 for every 34 square meters for the neighborhood store, which totals gets it to a total of 10 parking spaces on site. A planning justification report and conceptual site plan were submitted in support of the application. Subject lands are located on the southeast corner of Downey Street and Norfolk Street, and they are legally described as Plan 381 Lot 1 and 2. The zone change amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement as it provides for an efficient use of the land with existing municipal services on an underutilized site that is on an existing transit route. The lands are located within the settlement area, and the development will utilize existing municipal infrastructure, which removes any additional asset maintenance and replacement requirements, which are identified in the asset management plan. The development optimizes the use of land and infrastructure through the development of the underutilized site with municipal services that have a capacity to accommodate the development. The proposal will increase the economic viability of the site and will increase employment opportunities in the area. The lands are designated residential area in the official plan. The designation permits a range of residential uses, and convenience commercial uses are permitted in all designations, which include residential areas, as long as they meet certain locational criteria, including having direct access to an arterial road or a collector road, and having a minimum size of an establishment not exceeding 235 square meters. The development would permit a land use in a commercial zone that does not alter the exterior of the existing commercial building and retains compatibility with the surrounding residential area in terms of scale, density, and design. The lands are zoned neighborhood commercial C1. The requested zone would allow for the retail store with a maximum gross floor area of 95 square meters, a reduced parking requirement, and setbacks to recognize the existing building. There are no changes being proposed to the location of the existing parking or the building. The zoning provisions recognize the location of that existing building and the located parking. As a result, there are no additional impacts on the surrounding neighborhood, residential neighborhood. The new zoning bylaw requires a width of 2.8 meters with a length of 5.6 meters for parking spaces associated in that commercial zone. The requested zoning is seeking to decrease the minimum width of a parking space to 2.4 meters. Planning staff are of the opinion that without additional supporting material, the standards included in the new zoning bylaw represent a minimum standard and they should not be reduced. If a parking standard of 2.8 meters in width is maintained, a reduction of 1 parking space would be necessary from the parking area adjacent to Norfolk Street. The parking space could be replaced with a parallel parking space to the south of the existing gas canopy, which is along the south property boundary. Based on the parking rates in the zoning bylaw, the proposed zoning would require a minimum of 17 parking spaces to support all of the proposed uses. The applicant has submitted a concept plan that provides for 10 parking spaces, which includes 1 barrier-free parking space. And the previously approved site plan for the property provides 11 parking spaces without a barrier-free parking space. The concept plan provided in support of the rezoning application includes a barrier-free parking that is located next to the building, and it allows for a barrier-free path of travel to each of the building entrances. The commercial plaza has been operating for some time with a parking standard that does not meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw. The proposed retail use is not expected to generate additional traffic or parking needed beyond what was required for the former restaurant use. The reduction in the requirement of parking with the proposed parking rate allows for the subject lands to adequately function with the requested special provisions without contributing to the on-street parking in the area. So as a result, staff are recommending that a minimum width of 2.8 meters and a minimum length of 5.6 meters for a parking space is maintained. The application has been circulated. Canada Post Engineering, Community Services, Building and Festival Hydro have no concerns or objections. The notice of application was also sent out to 112 abutting property owners and published in the Beacon Herald. 1 letter was received from a resident objecting to a cannabis store being allowed on the subject lands. The City of Stratford did pass a resolution in January of 2019 that cannabis retail stores are permitted to operate in the City of Stratford. Province has requirements relating to the sale of cannabis, including distance separations from schools, and the subject land complies with those requirements. So we do have a recommendation before you. The zone change application with provision of a minimum width of 2.8 meters and a minimum length of 5.6 meters for a parking space is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms with the city's official plan and the intent of the zoning bylaw, and is consistent with the city's strategic priorities, and it represents good planning. And I'm available to answer any further questions through the chair.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Bannon, and Ms. Baker is also available for questions, I believe. So any questions from council with regards to regarding this zone change amendment? Councillor Gaffney.
I'll move the staff recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. A seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Bunting. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and I believe that's unanimous. Moving down to item number 5, looking for adjournment. Tonight's meeting, moved by Councillor Healy, second by Councillor Burbach. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Very much.
Thank you. We'll reconvene and I'll turn it back over to the clerk.
Through your worship, item 15 is council reconvene, and 15.1 is declarations of pecuniary interest made at standing committees.
Seeing none.
Item
Councillor
15.
Gaffney.
Item 7.4. And
On the reconvene on committee.
okay, sorry. No, sorry.
But if it was, it would be 7.4 and bylaw 11.2. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, it's okay. Want to make sure it's in the record. Okay, seeing none, we have the confirmatory bylaw. Mr. Bantock, first and second reading. Moved by Councillor Vasilakos and Councillor Henderson. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. Third and final reading. Councillor Sabin and Councillor Clifford. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And a motion to adjourn this evening's proceedings. Councillor Vasilakos and Councillor Burbach. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.